CEO of Google DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, seems to have completely lost his mind. He seems like a very clever chap, but jumped out at me at this article in Fortune I saw recently was that it's just completely ludicrous. There's absolutely nothing that makes sense about his recommendations. I mean, he's clearly an extremely clever bloke and has won for a Nobel Prize in chemistry, but he says some stuff here that's just utterly off the charts bonkers. So, I don't know about humans and AI being rivals in 5 years. Probably. Might be right. Who am I to say? Will we colonize the galaxy in 5 years? I doubt it. What really got me was how he said that if everything goes well, then we should be in an era of radical abundance in the 2030s. He said this $600 million giant is dead on track to possibly create technology in the next 5 to 10 years that will make everything all right for humanity. The golden era of the 2030s, space exploration and supercharged workers. So there's going to be a renaissance in human existence, apparently. This golden era is only 5 short years away. So artificial general intelligence can solve what I call root node problems in the world, curing terrible diseases, much healthier and longer lifespans, finding new energy sources, Hassabis said. He had very rosy predictions, and yeah, okay, some other people say there might be sand in the wheels. LinkedIn CE Opportunity Officer Anish Raman said that technological disruption will first break the bottom rung of the career ladder. I mean, I don't know where they're talking about. Which world are they living in that they think there'll be radical abundance in the 2030s? There's a lot of things that we don't want to do with the machine. You wouldn't want a robot nurse. Okay, there's something about the human empathy aspect of care that's particularly humanistic. Yeah, fair enough. Bill Gates expects a utopian society where humans have all the grunt work off their plates, giving way to a shorter work week. Should we work like 2 or 3 days a week? Well, this is a question that's been at the forefront of economists' minds for like about 100 years. Keynes, famously, around about 80 years ago, said he didn't. He thought that basically by now in human history we'd have solved all the key economic questions and we had to just chill out. And because we have such high productivity that most people in the world, in which world, developed world, poor world, don't know. We'll get onto that in a minute. We'd just be able to sit back and, chill out, whatever you want to do. Yeah, come on. But this thing about having somehow, whatever Hassabis calls radical abundance, a kind of golden era, it's just nonsense. Okay, so I've spent my life, last 25 years, working particularly in the least developed countries around the world. And I can tell you that in the roughly 50 countries that make up the least developed countries, there is no radical abundance. In fact, in many of them, we're moving in the opposite direction. So, extreme poverty, let's start with that. About a tenth of all of the world, so about 700 million people, live in extreme poverty, defined by the very, very low bar by the World Bank as surviving on less than $2.15 per day. And that's accounting for prices. So it's in US dollars, purchasing power parity terms. $2.15 a day. So it's what $2.15 would buy you in the United States using the year that they go by. So basically, what? Some bread? Most of the people are in sub-Saharan Africa, where poverty is about a third, triple the global average. So they're not in any kind of golden era, and they're not going to be, as I'll say in a minute, in the next 5 years. Certainly not even 5, certainly not 5, not 10, perhaps never. Poverty trends. The global extreme poverty rate was revised upward for 2022 from 9% to 10.5%. So it got worse. It's going to go down a bit in 2025. South Asia's seen the most significant reduction, while poverty's gone up in the Middle East and North Africa. Inequality, something that people don't tend to talk about because they see poverty as a technical problem you can somehow solve, letting the super rich get ever richer. Over 2.8 billion people live on $2.15 to $6.85 a day, which is a much more kind of realistic extreme poverty mark. So it makes them very, very vulnerable to setbacks. So even if they've gone above this very, very low bar of $2.15 a day in purchasing parity terms, it doesn't mean they're going to stay there. Lots of them fall back, which is a horrific prospect. About 65% of the world's population lives in countries where income inequality is rising. COVID reversed decades of declining global inequality, with between-country inequality increasing sharply in 2020. Let's not talk about specific cases. So anecdotally, there are some horrific examples of sheer human suffering that no amount of AI seems likely to solve. These are not technical questions, they're political. In Sudan, right now, half of the country's 45 million people are in famine. An enormous number of people have had to relocate due to the ongoing civil unrest. There's many, many tens of thousands of deaths due to the civil war. Let's talk about Palestine for a little bit. In Gaza, it looks like Israel could exterminate as much as 10% of the entire population. So never mind the roughly 60,000 people who've died during the genocide, the total, according to scientific journals, could rise to 200,000 because Israel's destroyed all the hospitals and isn't letting any food in. So people are starving. 200,000 is about 10% of the entire population. That is never mind the other indicators of genocide, which are well known and horrific and shouldn't be glossed over, but that's 10% of the entire population dead. That's nothing to do with AI or whatever the stuff that Hassabis is talking about. I think he's living in a dream world. Okay, so on the Sustainable Development Goals, currently only about 17% of the Sustainable Development Goal targets are on track to be achieved by 2030. For most, 67%, we can only hope that progress accelerates if we're to get anywhere near achieving them by 2030. In 16% of cases, the targets are going in the wrong direction. They're getting worse. What, is AI going to solve that? No. Regional variation. There's enormous variation by region, again, underlining the point that these are political problems which are connected with the way the world economy works and capitalism, essentially. Some countries have made advances in health and poverty reduction, but overall, global process will not be enough to meet the SDGs by 2030. I mean, will any of them be achieved by 2030? At the moment, the only one that's definitely been achieved is more internet, but most of them won't be. We're way off track, especially on the goals related to poverty and inequality. If we're to get anywhere near them, we need major policy shifts and investment to change course. They're not things that will be solved by some tinkering through AI. As good as it may be, I don't know. If we achieve artificial general intelligence by then, who knows? Will this new intellectual force want to solve the deep-rooted structural and ongoing problems of global poverty and inequality at all? I don't know what Hassabis is talking about. Is he only talking about the West? He's British. Britain, the US, Europe, I don't know. But those are just a small fraction of the people in the world. So the guy's worth about $500 million. So for comparison, that's the same as the sovereign wealth funds of Saudi Arabia, Hong Kong, and Qatar. So these are kind of sources of cash that countries put aside and invest. So one man alone, the chief executive officer and co-founder of Google DeepMind, is worth the same as the sovereign wealth funds of these three rich countries and territories: Saudi Arabia, Hong Kong, and Qatar. To me, that's incredible that one person is able to commandeer such enormous wealth. Alphabet, Google's umbrella company, has a market capitalization of 2.12 trillion US dollars. And that, for comparison, it's not strictly a correct comparison, it's stocks and flows, but it's more than double the gross domestic product, the GDP, of all 50 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And DeepMind's revenue is about 2 to 4 billion for comparison. So what this kind of techno-feudalism represents, and the sort of tinkering mentality that goes alongside it, the technocratic faith-based artificial intelligence mania, what it represents is simply a glossing over of the horrific inequality that always existed in capitalism globally, and which is still there today, deeply entrenched in many, many countries, and more importantly, between rich and poor countries. It's not a lack of intelligence, so to speak, that's causing these enormous, long-standing, historical, structural inequities in global capitalism. To repeat myself, it's not technocratic. We're not talking about producing some sort of clever solution that in a couple of years will right the world's wrongs and create radical human abundance, or whatever these people want to call it. No, the problems are political and economic, to do with the way that the global economy has long been structured and the way that we extract resources from developing countries, what used to be called the third world, the less developed countries, the poor world, the majority world is the way I like to talk about it. It's structural and inherent to the way the global economic system works. You don't tinker with it with some sort of Silicon Valley techno-utopian thinking. This is naive and misplaced. Perhaps if somebody like Hassabis really wanted to address the problem of the lack of human flourishing and human abundance, he might like to transfer some of his $500 million to the rest of the world, the majority world. $500 million would build about 30 district hospitals in Ghana, for example. Musk, whose net worth is 800 times that, it's $400 billion, could, if so inclined, invest in poorer countries and create the necessary infrastructure, schools, hospitals, teachers, nurses, and doctors. These are such large amounts of money that you can actually do something about it. To his credit, Bill Gates, has moved in that direction. He promises to give away all of his fortune, and he seems to have good intentions, although I don't think philanthropy is the way forward. But these aren't issues that are going to be solved by AI, and I think we need to be quite well aware of them. They're just huge, huge, almost unimaginable inequities and inequalities of wealth. And to lead to some sort of generalized human flourishing, radical abundance is complete pie in the sky stuff, something that's not going to happen, and which leads me to suspect that these people are just living in a kind of dream world, or glossing over the real problems of the world, or trying to sell their product, more likely. And I'm kind of incredulous that they even get reported as serious, because it's such patent nonsense, and we should all ignore it.